This is the Staff Hearing Officer meeting of May 15th, 2024. We will start with preliminary matters. Ms. Gu, do we have any requests for continuances, withdrawals, postponements, or addition of ex-agenda items?
To my knowledge, no, we do not. Thank you.
Do we have any announcements or appeals?
No.
I do not either. Do we have anyone logged into Zoom?
I do not see any raised hands on Zoom, and I don't see any raised hands in the room.
Okay, very good. This is an opportunity for comments from members of the public pertaining to items not on this agenda. Each person would be limited to 2 minutes. Is there anyone who would like to make comments on items not on this agenda?
No raised hands yet.
Very good. Moving forward, we do have a consent item, 116 Santa Barbara Street. Due to the nature of this project, I would like to ask project planner Barbara Burkhart to do a brief presentation on this. And Ms. Gu, if you could switch screens to her PowerPoint. Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Gullett. Oh, I need to sign back in on the laptop. Thank you. Okay. Oops, that's not what I want. Oh, okay, it's just different on my screen. All right, thank you. So the project is for a site on Santa Barbara Street. We're calling it 116 Santa Barbara Street. It also includes 120 and 122 Santa Barbara Street. Here's a vicinity map. The site is in the funk zone. And this is a bit closer, Santa Barbara Street and East Yananali Street. Here we have some photos. The site can see a bit here, a vacant parking lot, and then a building on 120 and another building on 122. This is an image from within the parking lot looking at the building at 120. And the rest of the photos are of the surrounding neighborhood. The project itself is for a request for a change of use of Suite B in the 116 Santa Barbara Street building from industrial to restaurant, and Suite C in the 120 Santa Barbara Street building from industrial to restaurant, as well as conversion of the existing parking lot from automobile parking to outdoor seating. This image shows the site plan as currently is. These are the 2 suites here that would be converted from industrial to restaurant uses, and this is the parking lot. There are 9 parking spaces, automobile parking spaces currently, and then this is the proposed project. These spaces remain the same. They're permitted. They're seated as shown here. For the proposed areas, the applicant is really maxing out the seating. So this is a max amount of seating they could get on these in these areas and still have access pathways as required by building. I do want to touch on a couple things. The staff report goes into more detail on more things, but I want to talk about AB 2097. Because this project is applying it. It's an assembly bill that became effective January 1st of 2023, which prohibits public agencies from imposing automobile parking requirements on projects that are located within a half mile of public transit. This site is located within a half mile of the Amtrak train station. AB 2097 applies to all projects except hotels and event centers. That includes new ground-up development, and also when a change of use requires an approval and when site alterations require approval, which those 2 are the case with this project. So the project requires a coastal development permit and design review approvals from the ABR. And the project is sort of a phased development. The first phase would be for site and building improvements to prepare for future restaurant tenants and to establish the approved number of seating and the location and square footage of those areas. The second phase would be when individual tenants come in and make their own improvements. There would be flexibility for them in this type and configuration of seating, but it would need to comply with the established numbers and areas that are part of the request today. That's kind of why the applicant is showing so many seats, is so that this one CDP can cover multiple scenarios in the future. The exterior improvements to the building are minimal. There's really just the addition of a new folding door here. It's at the rear of this building, which is adjacent to the parking lot. And this is just a full set of elevations. You can see there's no other proposed alterations to the building. And there is also bike parking proposed in the parking lot. There would be 15 short-term parking spaces here at the front of the lot along Santa Barbara Street, and then a bit further in, 6 long-term spaces. Long-term means covered and secured, so these are bike lockers that would really be for employees coming onto the site. Also proposed are some right-of-way improvements. These 2 curb cuts would be eliminated and replaced with new curb and gutter. That would also provide a couple new parking spaces on the street. So the one coastal policy I want to discuss is maintenance and enhancement of public access to the coast. That's really the main one for this project. There are others discussed in the staff report, but this is one I want to talk about. Because the city cannot require automobile parking per AB 2097, as the site is a quarter mile from the Amtrak station. It is a quarter mile from the Amtrak station, which is a good thing. That station also has a public parking lot. There are also other public parking lots within a quarter mile of the site. There's a public lot at the Californian Hotel. There's a Garden Street lot, which also has a pedestrian pathway right over to Santa Barbara Street, where the project is, and as well as a Palm Park parking lot. And here is an image of those lots. This is the project site here. This is the Amtrak station and their public parking. This is the Hotel Californian public parking. These are both very close to the funk zone. Actually, the Hotel Californian is in the funk zone. Here's the Garden Street lot, and this is that pedestrian pathway that pops you out onto Santa Barbara Street. And this is the Palm Park lot. There was also a study done, we call it the funk zone study, but it was about access and parking in the funk zone, which showed 35% of study respondents used active modes of transportation to get to and from the funk zone. It also showed that no more than 73% of funk zone parking spaces were used at any one time. The project also provides bike parking, as I mentioned earlier, and Uber and Lyft services are popular in this area. So because we cannot require automobile parking, staff and decision makers need to reconcile these relief from the parking requirements with coastal public access policy. So we worked with transportation planning and came up with a what we feel is a clear, consistent, and justifiable means of mitigating this discrepancy, which would be to provide 25% of the required bicycle parking spaces as long-term. This is because in the coastal zone, we can only require short-term, but these long-term spaces would make it easier for employees to ride bicycles to work. So currently, if we didn't have AB 2097, this project would require 138 parking spaces. And that's just because of they're showing this maximum amount of customer seating. So based on that number, the project would require 20 bicycle parking spaces. The project is proposing 21 spaces, 15 as short-term and 6 as long-term. And I'm sorry, this should say 25.25%. So they're hitting that mark that we worked out with transportation planning. Therefore, staff is supportive of the project. We feel reasonable measures have been taken to provide site access. The ABR is reviewing the project. They'll ensure compatible development. They'll ensure that no impact on scenic coastal resources is made. And let me just flip real quick. Oh, it's not here, I'm sorry. In the staff report, I have an image of the coastal resources in the area, and there are really none around the site. We're also supportive because rideshare services such as Uber and Lyft are popular. There are a number of nearby parking lots and improved pedestrian access with the closing of those 2 driveways. Therefore, we find the project would not adversely affect public access to the coast. We would request, if you do approve the CDP before you today, that you condition that approval. There is a closed lust cleanup site on the site. There's no ground disturbance proposed in the area, so we don't feel that this is an issue, but we do have a condition that we would like to add, which covers situation where that area was disturbed. So we ask that you would add that as a condition of approval.
Can I ask for a clarification on that?
Yes.
Is the language of that condition in the draft conditions currently, or is this a new condition?
It is in the draft, yes, yes. And with that condition added to the project, we feel that it would qualify for a CEQA exemption, which is referred to as common sense, where it can be seen with certainty that there is no possibility that the activity in question would have a significant effect on the environment. As stated previously, the project will return to ABR if the CDP is approved. That will be their next steps. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation and hand it over to the applicant if he would like to make one as well.
Very good, thank you. Kevin Moore, the architect for the project, is in attendance. Kevin, could you share on the project? And I'll have a couple questions for you too. And we have the plan set available. Okay. Okay. So.
Would you like to start with your questions, or would you like me to run through a couple of things first?
I can let you know what I want to know more information about, and you can cover it when you do. One, as Ms. Burkhart said, you're maximizing the number of seats. Presumably, this configuration would more or less comply with ADA, fixture count, and whatnot. Just wanting to know what you think is the likely seat configuration. Kind of related to that, how it would be kept funky in this area. It looks fairly sterile from the plans now. I know this is just preliminary, and you're just looking at maximum. There's maybe one more bike space provided than required. If you can comment on that. And also, you're thinking of curbside management. I know that's a function of the city, but 138 spaces, which would be required for this 2 years ago if this was a ground up, it's about an acre of parking. And maybe providing wayfinding for patrons and just thoughts of how to make it work as we optimize what we do have in the right way.
Okay. Thank you for those questions. I'll try and cover those. So something that's important to also mention is that a long time ago when we were doing the TIs for 120 Santa Barbara Street, the city approached the ownership about installing bike racks in the right-of-way. And there was a partnership between the city and the owners. The owners paid for the material and the city did the installation. So although we're not getting any credit for those spaces, the ownership definitely contributed to that number of parking spaces that are currently there. So yes, we are showing these spaces here. The reality is we also have additional bike parking right in front of the property that is very visible to the public and well used. So I think the overall approach to this is to try and provide as much flexibility for the future of this property as possible. And it's our understanding that the trigger for requiring a coastal development permit is an increase in the amount of parking required for the properties. So,
Yeah, the language and the coastal regulations is a change of intensity of the use.
right, which is directly related to the number of parking spaces required for the use. So the idea is to, as Ms. Burkhardt said, show as much seating as is possible on the site to increase the variable uses that would be allowable on the site. And yes, that includes potential future restaurant uses, but that might also include other uses in the outdoor space. And early on, we had conversations with planning about, is there a difference between additional square footage and additional parking requirements? And wouldn't this CDP cover both of those eventualities? So that's a question and perhaps a clarification, because there is some mention of no new square footage is a part of this project, but perhaps there's a different way to describe that. Because yes, there is no additional square footage, but we wouldn't want that to preclude square footage that is allowable within the balance of the parking that would be provided for this. And then to get back to your question, so the seating was simply laid out in a grid to show here's accessible paths of travel, here's approximately how many seats could be fit on the site. And we did some back and forth with building and planning to establish, this is, although a lot, it is a reasonable and could be accommodated on the site. So I would expect in its final form, it would be more funky and more interesting and designed. So it wouldn't just be a sea of chairs and tables out there. The points about wayfinding, I think that would be incorporated into the design of what ends up being proposed, such that it would be very apparent where, if somebody wanted to get into one of these rear spaces, that they would be, clearly directed in that way.
Yeah, on that, it was more in relation to available parking, and maybe it's something on the website that the tenants have, but just not. It's not super obvious where the Garden Street lot is, even though there's a shortcut to it very close to there. And acknowledging much of this is on the city to provide a good wayfinding program for the funk zone.
Well, I think it would behoove the tenants to definitely have that information on their website, and I think they would be agreeable to that because they would want that knowledge to be known. So again, there's really very minimal development along with this permit, it's really just this doorway to provide access to that rear space, and really to provide flexibility for development in the future, whatever that may be. So.
Very good, thank you. Ms. Gu, do we have any public comment?
On checking Zoom, I do not see any raised hands for this particular item. And there are none in the room. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank the applicant and Mr. Moore. I can approve the coastal development permit. I concur with staff on the CEQA determination, and this would be subject to the conditions of approval as written in the staff report. This action is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days. Ms. Gu, can you put up the other PowerPoint that gives instruction on that? For further information on how to appeal, please contact planning staff at the number on the screen. Appeals may be filed in person at 630 Garden Street within, again, 10 calendar days of this approval. And with that, thank you again. And I look forward to seeing this. And I cannot understate how this 2097 change is going to change the Funk Zone. It will be more vibrant, but a bit more inconvenient to park. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burkhardt.
Thank you.
Okay, our next project is 10 Rincon Vista Road. This is for zoning modification. And Ms. Kelly Broadison is our staff person who will share about this project.
Okay, good morning, Mr. Gullett. Yes, thank you for the introduction. 10 Rincon Vista. This project site is 6,390 square feet and is currently developed with a 3,500 square foot two-story residence and an attached garage. The project today that comes before you consists of a minor addition to accommodate the installation of a residential elevator and an increase of 33 square feet to the existing second-story balcony. And the project the request that they're asking for today is a front setback mod to allow these improvements to encroach into the 30-foot front setback. You can see by the site plan and as described in the staff report that the site is constrained with 2 front yard setbacks, and there really is no other location to allow the elevator to be situated. Let's see. So because of these constraints, staff believes that the request for a front setback could be supported. Again, it's a corner lot. It's got 2 30-foot setbacks. It's got steep topography along the way. And the way the existing structure is situated on the lot, there is, you can see there's no really other location to place the front setback. This project was also reviewed by the Single Family Design Board on April 8th, and that received positive comments. Staff reviewed the project and also determined that it qualifies for a CEQA exemption under Section 15301, which allows for additions to existing structures. And therefore, staff recommends that the staff hearing officer approve the front setback modification, making the findings in the staff report. And we have the applicant here also if he wants to make a presentation.
Very good. And I'd ask the applicant to come up and introduce themselves. Thank you, Ms. Broadison. And I have a couple questions as well. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, good morning. I'm Sean McCauley. I'm here on behalf of Jan Hockhauser and Hockhauser Blatter Associates, and the property owners Charlie and Eileen Reed.
Very good. Thank you for being here. So I went out to the site. I reviewed the plans. Just a couple questions about that elevator. I see by the elevations that it's not as high as the chimney on the house. And just want to ask if this is the minimum height required for this elevator. I looked around the neighborhood, the uphill neighbors, I don't think their views would be impacted by this design at all, but I'd like you to speak to that and to how the top of this elevator structure would be finished in case anyone can see the top of it.
You can look at the elevations too.
Yeah. To answer your question, the elevations will show, we kind of arbitrarily picked this site to be close to the ridge. We didn't want it to be too close to the chimney, as that's a pretty prominent feature. We definitely have, it's not the minimum, but I think it's pretty close to where they want the hoist beam to be located. But I mean, I know that can be lowered slightly. But we did want, something similar to the chimney is only for that second story living room, but the whole massing does continue all the way to the ground, and we wanted to kind of match that.
Okay, and then the finish on the top, it does show that it is finished on the on one of these sheets, but I just want to confirm that.
You mean?
Yes.
Yeah, this is just be a typical. This is a slight curb or parapet on top, just to provide a place for waterproofing or a clean edge to the enclosure.
Okay, yeah, and I appreciate that it's not the minimum height for aesthetic purposes here. I don't see that this is going to impact anyone's views, not that that's a major consideration. This is a very reasonable improvement. I appreciate staff's report. I can make the findings outlined in the report, including the CEQA findings, and will approve this project as well. And like the other project, this is appealable within 10 calendar days of this action. And with that, I close the item.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gu, is there anything else on today's agenda? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't ask for a public comment. Is there any public comment on this?
On this particular item, I don't see any raised hands on Zoom, and there is no one else in the room. Thank you.
Oh, very good, thank you. Okay, and with that, I'll conclude this staff hearing officer meeting of May 15th, 2024. Thank you.